First of all, I wanted to introduce the new board, and I will give floor to them. So you've met Robert, he is our vice president right now, and Bartosz is our second vice president. Unfortunately, Paweł, who is the president of Mars Society Polska, sends his regards. He couldn't come, but the representation is here. The purpose of the meeting is, I think, to introduce everybody and to see what can we contribute to make a restart of activities with the new board in Poland. So maybe floor is yours.
I want to present you our vision of a new conference, Horizon Mars. It will be the fourth edition of this conference, and the first edition it was 2020. A second edition it was 2022, and 2024 we will be making the next edition. And this is our vision of what we want to doing as the next. Here it will be the three part of three streams of this scientific conference. Probably will be in October 2024, and the first part of this will be Earth observation. Earth observation is a very popular motive in scientific conference. Last conference took place in Oslo, and it was organized by International Astronautical Federation. This next point of this conference will be space planetary technology, which can be used on the Moon, Mars, and International Space Station, and could be used later on the Earth, like cleaning water, cleaning Earth, so that to rescue the climate. And it will be a thematic space conference, and this is our idea. And a fourth part, it will be Lunar's mission like Artemis, Lunar's check missions, for instance, later lunar Polish missions, and this direction to Moon. We treat Moon as a milestone on the way to Mars, and Mars we treat as a milestone on the way to the exploitation or solar system. And this is our idea.
All right, so do you mind if I just want to get clarification? Okay. So you want to hold a conference. So this is a conference to discuss the first satellites? Or are you talking about building a satellite? Which is it?
A conference to discuss.
All right, so then I have a question. There are already many Earth observation satellites. So are you talking about a conference to discuss new ideas for Earth observation satellites? Mm-hmm. What is it that you're proposing to do?
I think that they understand the question. So, but I have no insight into the area. Into the idea? We have organized Horizon Mars conference last year, yes, in autumn. So it was the second edition.
The second edition.
And we organize it every 2 years. So I guess the question is to find the best profile for the next edition. What was the profile of the previous? It was the mining profile, yes.
Yes. And now it would be satellites and climate.
It's basically the purpose is to maybe not do the like groundbreaking, like a breakthrough in the or innovation in the technology, more to facilitate the Polish community around it. So I guess this is more of an idea.
So it is.
But the subject of the conference is satellites, remote sensing for Earth, Mars, and Moon.
Yes, you must answer.
Yes. The main idea is to link this topic with climate changes. And the second point of this framework is connected with new technology which can be used out of Earth and could be used on the Earth to rescue the climate. This is very popular problematic. And we treat the moon as a milestone to the Mars. And this is something which would be on the way to the Mars. And this technology could be used out of Earth and could be help us to rescue the climate.
I understand that remote sensing can give us more information about the climate of the Earth and can help guide our efforts here. I understand that. Remote sensing can also be used to explore the Moon and Mars, and has been, and is being done. There may be new ideas of what the next remote sensing mission to Mars should be. That's a good subject to discuss. If you are talking about remote sensing, there's no need to have the Moon as a milestone to Mars. We are already sending remote sensing satellites to Mars. You can send remote sensing satellites to the Moon for the purpose of supporting Artemis or other lunar missions. Okay, I think I understand. You want to have a conference on remote sensing satellites for Earth, Moon, and Mars.
Yes, that was the point.
Okay, so, all right, fine. It seems like a good idea. And so you, the Polish Mars Society, would be working together with some other societies to organize this conference.
That sounds good.
Well, the Czech Mars Society, but also some universities or other satellite associations, or?
Yeah.
My question is different. Okay, so this is a good subject because, as you said, there is much interest in remote sensing to deal with climate change, and therefore the same technology that we can deal with climate change, we can also explore Mars and the Moon. Okay, my question is more tactical. That is, if you would, this subject has the advantage of interesting people beyond those that are just interested in Mars. So the idea is, if you want to organize a conference on this, you should create cooperation to do it together with some other organizations. In other words, to co-sponsor the conference with you. The people from the satellite industry, people from the universities, but also people from, well, business, but even people interested in exploring the Moon, people interested in the climate change from a scientific point of view. So that's good, but it seems like a good project. Another thing that we did successfully in the United States, well, it was actually done internationally, but it was, but we did it. That could be implemented here in Poland. What we did was we organized a high school engineering design competition to design a Mars mission. Now, in fact, there were some Poles that competed in that, in a European team. But the idea is that it's like a university engineering design class to design a Mars mission with certain stated constraints and certain objectives, and but done at the high school level. Okay, and so it's a competition, which makes it more interesting than a class. And also, we did something that was really unique, which is we had the teams present their designs, And then we had the teams each have a chance to criticize the designs of other teams, and then a chance to answer the criticism. And the kids really had fun with that. But this is a kind of a science education activity that what?
Could align with the conference.
Well, it could align, but it could just be separate. It's something that can be done. In other words, the conference is a single event that takes place in October 2024. This is something that could be done.
Maybe any hints how to reach particular groups?
We did it entirely outside the official school system. We announced we were holding a competition to design a Mars mission. And in fact, we did it during the summer when there was no school. We addressed it primarily to high school students who are, well, some of them would be interested in science, but they have an additional motivation of being able to put on their university applications that they took part in this activity. Even though we don't have accreditation as official anything, at least in the United States, when students apply to universities, they say, yes, here are my grades, here are my test scores, but they also say, here are activities that I did. And so unofficial activities can be useful to them. This was actually offered internationally for the whole world. And this was just done in the summer, and we had 6 teams formed, each with about 6 or 7 students. Okay, we had an Asia team, a Europe team, 3 North American teams. Anyway, it would all be Polish, and it would be done in Polish. Now we had then a bunch of lectures given to give people background on Mars exploration. Those lectures are all still available because they're on YouTube from the Mars Society. We had 12 or so experts giving a lecture on some aspect of Mars mission design, some on the search for life on Mars, some for space nuclear power, some for this, some for that, human factors, etc. And then also they can have access to a book. Now, we made no effort to get all the experts to agree with each other. Okay, because in the real world, when you do engineering, there's these people that say this and those people that say that. It's up to you to figure out what is true and what is useful. Then they were charged with designing a mission. So they had 2 weeks of lectures, 2 weeks of design, 1 week to write up their reports, and then the next week they would present their designs, and there would be judges, okay, who could be people like you or could be professors, who would judge the reports. But then, and we did this all by Zoom, so they could be from everywhere, and they were. So they all heard, each of the 6 teams presented a report verbally in half an hour to the judges. Then the next day, each of them could attack the other designs. Say, that you don't have enough life support system, you don't have enough power, you have this, that. Okay, then the next day, each would have a half hour to answer the criticisms. Then we would judge. And then we had trophies, first place, second place, third place, and everyone got a certificate. It worked very well. The students were highly motivated by the fact that it was a competition, that it was a very creative thing where you could design your own mission. We did not have them design the spacecraft. We had them design the program of exploration on the Martian surface. And we have plenty of information about how this was done. The advantage of doing it inside of Poland is everybody's in the same time zone. Everybody speaks the same language, okay, etc. Although these lectures that we have online are in English. And then this aspect of kind of debate, of criticism and rebuttal was also very motivating to many of the students. You see, in the regular classroom, knowledge is a burden. How much of this do we need to know for the exam? But in a design competition, knowledge is a tool. And in a debate, knowledge is a weapon. So give me this weapon. It changes the relationship of the student to knowledge and makes it much more interesting. So you're doing good in the following ways. Number one, you're getting a bunch of students excited about science and teaching some science. Second, you're showing all the adults who observe this the value of Mars in getting students interested in science. Okay, because even people who aren't interested in Mars want more students learning science. This is an important societal objective, right? STEM promotion, right? So, and Mars is a very good STEM motivator, okay? And anyway, this is an activity that, in addition to this conference, that you can try to organize. A Polish Mars mission engineering design competition, because it's something that I think would be in your means, and just promoting a conference, it's a good thing, but a lot of it is administrative in nature. It's participating in a conference, you present papers, but in terms of organizing a conference, is sort of an administrative type activity, and promotional advertising, etc.
I have a quick question though. How do you get the teams together for the rover competition? How do you get people to join that competition for the rovers? So how does the company get the universities to, how do they announce to the universities that there's a competition?
I get your point.
I'm saying like whatever you're doing to get that going with the rover, you do a similar thing with the high schools, and it doesn't have to necessarily be aligned with a curriculum or your state. It could be an extracurricular activity like an elective. There must be clubs that people are a part of, so it doesn't have to go through the state curriculum. It could be like an extracurricular activity.
In fact, if you have a university, it's much easier to reach such people because they are self-organizing. In the high school, you don't have many of those.
So might go to a university.
They are very quiet. I would like to ask you, did you have any feedback from the official educational system about the competition?
No, not at all. We had feedback from the students and from their parents.
Educators.
Many proud parents, very excited about it. We did it in the summer when the students were not in school, and the parents, and in some case the kids, were looking for something useful to do during the summer.
Remotely.
Okay, it was done remotely. Now, if it's possible, it could be done in the school year, in which case, potentially more powerfully, that is, if you could get, do schools have maybe a science club that meets after school? So you get the science clubs of different schools competing against each other. In our contest, it was just individuals from many different places
Signing up.
coming together and forming teams. But if you could get the school science clubs, this is a competition for high school science clubs.
What's interesting
Sounds
though
good.
is you had some people from Poland, so somehow they got the message to join that. So that's interesting.
I just graduated from high school, and we have in Poland really ambitious
Yes.
communities,
Yes.
and this competition will go viral. And
Very good. So you have connections. The other thing I
Well,
wanted
she's offering his opinion that many schools would want to compete.
yes,
right, but I'd like to say is that Mars Society has it all laid out. Has the rubrics, has everything set up.
They found it?
Yeah.
and Warsaw University organized really similar competition
Oh, nice.
about radiation during Mars.
Inspirational Design Challenge. Designing a human Mars mission is extremely effective. Okay. The fact that it's going to happen in the future is not a deterrent for young people, because they're going to live in that future. If you have a project to build a satellite, then by all means make it an Earth satellite, because that's easier to do. but in terms of as in creative effort of the imagination, you can paint a picture of Mars as easily as you can paint a picture of Earth. And you can design a Mars mission now. We don't have to wait till we go to the moon or till we have big space stations or any of that before we can design Mars missions. We can design them now. We can. Imagination has no limit.
NASA have got a program from Moon to Mars, and approximately 60% of technology which can be used on the Moon, they claims, this is not my claiming, especially from NASA, claims that could be used on the Mars.
I mean, the transportation technology in some cases, yes, but can be used to take you anywhere. But the surface systems for the Moon and Mars are different. And the systems for turning materials on the Moon and Mars into resources are different. And the scientific objectives on the surface of Mars are very different. On Mars, we're searching for evidence of life, past or present. That is not the science program of a moon base. On the Moon, we're interested in doing astronomy. That is not really the program for a Mars base. But if we're the Mars Society, we should encourage interest in Mars. Now, a conference like this, where we go broader than Mars, is very useful because we bring in a broader community. But in an educational effort, where we're getting students to design a mission, there's no reason not to go straight to Mars.
Question whether we should send people on the red planet.
Yeah.
It is dangerous or safely? This basic question.
Well,
From this first debate.
well, you don't go to either the Moon or Mars in order to be safe. If you want to be safe, you don't go to outer space. Outer space is not for people whose
Faint of
objective
heart.
is to be safe. People who want to be safe can do many other things. But the question is, do we dare to go to Mars? Yes, I think that discovering the truth about the existence and diversity of life in the universe is worth taking risks. And no one is being conscripted to go. Anyone who goes is going as a volunteer. So the question is, can we send people to Mars in our time? And I believe if we decide to do that, the answer is yes.
And I have a question, when?
It all depends. But from a technical point of view, we are closer today to sending people to Mars than we were to sending people to the Moon in 1961 when John F. Kennedy started our moon program, and we were there 8 years later. Okay? If Elon Musk does not walk off the edge of a cliff or skate off the edge of the ice, we could have people on Mars in 10 years. I do not think the NASA approach of wanting to do everything you might do before you go to Mars will get you to Mars, because there's an infinite number of alternative objectives, of precursor missions, testing programs, etc., etc., etc. And if you decide to do all of them or even half of them, you'll never get to Mars. In the 1960s, people said you can't go to the moon until you have a space station. There were people who said you can't go to the moon until you have nuclear rockets. There were people who said you can't go to the moon until you have a Saturn IX twice as powerful as the Saturn V. And at a certain point, they all had to be told, no, we're going to the moon. If you want to go to the moon, you need to go to the moon. If you want to go to Mars, you need to go to Mars. It's like Napoleon said, if you want to take Vienna, you need to take Vienna.
ultimate goal is going to Mars or just colonize Mars is a little bit different,
Okay,
because
now?
you need to be prepared some completely different conditions and goals.
Don't you think that this direction of moon can change the thinking of people about direction of the Mars? It is possible.
I'm not suggesting that you oppose the Artemis program, okay, and saying we should not go to the moon. They can go to the moon. I'm saying is we need to say we need to go to Mars, okay? Artemis is a complicated subject, okay? For instance, I do not believe the Artemis program is well run. I don't think the Artemis program is being conducted with the required degree of commitment. I have friends in Houston, Texas. They go by Johnson Space Center on the weekend. There are no cars in the parking lot. If you went by the parking lot of Johnson Space Center in the 1960s when we were doing Apollo, the parking lot would be full on the weekend. There's a difference in, do you understand what I'm saying? There's a difference in attitude. The Artemis program has already been going on 7 years now. They've yet to fly any astronauts in Artemis hardware. 7 years into Apollo, we were about to orbit the moon with Apollo 8. And they're doing things in Artemis, like building a lunar orbit gateway station, that don't have much to do with landing on the moon. Not really, no. So I wish Artemis well, but it is not being pursued as a really serious effort. And in any case, we will go to the moon, to Mars, when people decide to go to Mars, and that will be done irrespective of the Artemis. But in any case, Mars is where the science is, Mars is where the challenge is, and Mars is where the future is. Mars is the planet where we can discover the truth about life. Mars is the challenge, you see. Youth loves adventure. And yes, sure, going to the moon would be an adventure, but it's not a great deed in the sense that it was in the 60s. How much can you excite the imagination of youth with the idea of replicating something that was done in their grandparents' generation? Youth wants to go where no one has gone before. That's the great adventure. So that's why, as an educational challenge, it's much more exciting to, for instance, in this design competition, to design something that has never been done, to design something new. So certainly we can design and have young people design Mars missions. And then finally, in answer to your point, it is quite true that settling Mars goes beyond exploring Mars. But while you don't need to go to the moon before you explore Mars, you do need to explore Mars before you settle Mars. Okay, that is on the critical path to the settlement of Mars. The immediate task for our time is the exploration of Mars, in the course of which we will learn where the best places on Mars are to put a settlement, and we'll learn a lot about the technologies required to survive. And
how do you see Mars Society is going to point?
So, in addition to doing the sorts of things that the Mars Society has been doing, we will continue doing those things, the rover challenges, the habitats, the conferences, and so forth. This is what we're going to do that is new. Okay, we're going to launch what we call the Mars Technology Institute. Okay, and the purpose of this institute will be to develop the technologies for settling Mars, settling Mars. Okay. There are important technological areas that need to be addressed before people can settle Mars. Okay. These address three major challenges that a Mars settlement would have. One is its labor shortage, so labor-saving machinery, automation, robotics, artificial intelligence. Okay. Second is its shortage of farm area, okay, which means basically biotechnology to create ultra-productive crops and also ultra-productive, high-density agricultural systems, things like aquaponics, genetically modified foods, so forth, because in Mars you won't have giant fields to grow your food. It has to be done in very limited areas. And the third is energy technology, which are advanced nuclear technologies, the fission and fusion, breeder reactors, etc. Because there's no fossil fuels on Mars others than those that you might make using some other energy source. And solar energy is weak and wind energy is weak. And there won't be water power until after we terraform the planet. So those three areas. Now the idea is to do innovations in those areas, but then spin them off for use on Earth, license them, okay, to make money, to fund further research, okay. That is, we want the Mars Technology Institute to both be a technological engine for Mars settlement and a financial engine. That's the idea. My business plan, as it were, for a Mars colony. What will a Mars colony export? One of the main things we'll export will be its inventions, because the Mars colony will be a group of technologically skilled people in a challenging environment where they will be forced to innovate. So we will innovate and we will export those inventions. The idea of the Mars Technology Institute is to start doing that now before we go to Mars.
Any collaboration opportunities that you maybe you see? Is there any? I would say, first of all, local Mars Society communities like ours, or maybe Czech, Austrian. Do you see any possibility to get involved?
Right. Okay. So here's the thing. This is still in the beginning stage. Okay. We're drawing up the plan. Okay. And then once I have the plan adequately defined, I'm going to go to people with serious money. Okay? And I'm going to say, fund this. Now, if what I get initially is $5 million kind of money, okay, what we'll do is we will start by funding discrete research projects done at a variety of locations, universities probably, as also potentially research companies, and these can be distributed around the world, okay, although they'll be part of a coordinated program, okay, and we may well start that way. That's quite probable. But the idea is eventually to get big money, okay, $100 million kind of money. And then we will establish an actual campus, an institute that will be in a particular place. Okay. Now we still might have projects going on. We will also have a center. So that's the overall vision here. Yes.
Do you consider any voluntary-based communities or like us, for example, in terms of hive mind to support the project? It's mostly a voluntary, it's free.
Yes.
Just
Simple answer.
simple questions.
But yes, absolutely. We'll want to, as part of this institute, mobilize volunteer research projects. And because one of the great strengths of the Mars Society since its foundation has been the amount of work it has been able to get done using volunteers. Okay, we never could have accomplished what we have accomplished if we had had to pay people.
Which is about the place was institute
On the
in
planet.
the United States, in Colorado, or Europe?
Where would the institute be? Well, I envision the central. I mean, these individual projects that I mentioned could be anywhere. They could be here in Poland, in France, in the United States, in Australia, in South Korea, anywhere. Okay, in the free world. I believe that the Central Institute, when we finally get it funded, will be in the United States.
Do you think that it is ethically reasonable to discuss possible human genetic modifications concerning permanent colonization of Mars? And when do you think, what is the trigger to start such a discussion?
Okay, here's what I think about that. And I'm actually writing a new book right now, which will be published next year, called New World, What Can We Create on the Red Planet? Okay. And it's about the settlement of Mars. And the point of view that I take here is not one of designing a utopia, but one more based sort of almost on a concept of natural selection, where I believe that when it becomes possible to settle Mars, there will be numerous Mars settlements established, okay, by people with all sorts of different ideas about what it should be. Different ideas of the political and social structure, and different ideas on the very question that you just raised, okay? That is, some of these will be settled by people who believe that that is what should be done. And others will be settled by people who believe that must not be allowed at all, okay? And what happens next will be determined by which ideas work better, which leads to the most prosperous and happy society, one that draws the most immigrants. By definition, the society that eventually prevails on Mars will be the one whose population outgrows the rest, which means it will need to be the most attractive to immigrants and also the most prosperous, and those two sort of go together. But, for example, I don't believe that the prevailing Martian society could be a tyranny, because no one would want to go there. Okay? So this is in contrast to some visions you see in science fiction, where it's a tyranny because the government can turn off your air. I think any such society would fail to grow on Mars. Okay? So now there are other things that could be very different from colony to colony. And I can't answer your question right now. You see, my own personal view is I'm opposed to genetic modification of people. Okay, I am in this respect a conservative. But I don't think anyone on Mars is going to be interested in my opinion on this matter. They're going to have their own opinion on this matter. And so the question of which leads to a better society will be settled in action by what happens.
Don't you think that we are fluently coming to the global treaty of regulations on Mars that should be somehow taken like as Artemis Accords, but maybe Space Treaty in '67?
Well, I think that shortly after Columbus, the Pope divided the world between Spain and Portugal. And they said Spain would get all of this and Portugal would get all of that. Okay? And that's fine, but it was ultimately settled by where the different settlers went and so forth. And ultimately, of course, while the British established a successful claim in what is now the United States, the settlers decided to be independent. And ultimately all the colonies of all the European countries in the New World became independent. And I think that that whatever the treaties are of the earth, it's like the Pope dividing the world between Spain and Portugal. That ultimately, the Mars will belong to the people that go there.
Mars.
Yes, Mars will belong to the Martians, and and they'll sort it out, and they will also determine whether there will be genetic modification of people or all sorts of things like that.
Okay, so what's your vision about international regulations of access to Mars? For example, do you think that agreements such as Artemis Accords may be sufficient to regular use of planet's resources?
Well, the Artemis Accords were an attempt to try to create a basis for private property rights on the moon. And I think they're actually a step in the right direction. I don't think they're sufficient. But I do believe when there are people on Mars, the Martian colonies will establish basis for claims of private property, which is necessary if you want to develop property.
And the last question, yes?
Maybe.
We have long known that human beings are the weakest part of space missions, right? And do you think that religion can be
Help.
Binding point
Yes.
of
Expansion of Earth people on the Mars.
All right.
Other technology.
Well, that is also something that will be sorted out by the Mars colonies. Because, a very important point is that a Mars colony, as I said before, will require, to be successful, liberty, but it will also require social solidarity, and religion can serve as a strong agent of social solidarity. There can also be downsides to religion. It can be exclusionary. It can also, in some cases, be an obstacle to science. But I do think that the successful Mars colony will have to have some aspects of its society that encourage strong social solidarity. Just from an anthropological point of view, if you look at almost any society on Earth that has been successful, the people sing together. When people sing together, it draws them together. And of course, that has been rather prominent in religious activities in Catholicism, Protestantism, Judaism, and other religions. So there may well be religion on Mars. But once again, this is the sort of thing that will be sorted out by experience.